New day out of my head, thinking about the things you said. Oh.
Hey, it's Grady at Twin Creek Audio. I realized recently that I haven't made a mixing video in a while, not like a long form mixing video, so I thought I'd do that today. Today I'm going to do a hybrid mix with my Soundcraft Sapphyre console, my DAW of choice, which is Reaper. I'm going to use a couple of tricks in the box, and of course the console and some outboard gear, and mix a cool song. Today I'm going to use the song Out of My Head from the Completists debut album In Some April Dusk that came out back in 2015. So you can compare the mix I'm going to do today, hybrid style, to the original mix, which I'll put a link to in the video description. So this mix is really cool. The song's kind of quirky. It's got some kind of standard instrumentation, but also some kind of odd things. So starting down here we have drums, and then bass, and then we've got acoustic guitars, and there's actually 3 different channels worth of acoustic guitar here, a left, right, and a center acoustic, then electric guitars, and then over here we have a synthesizer. It's kind of a vintage synth sound, and it's actually generated with a vintage Commodore Amiga 500 personal computer using the built-in, I think it's 12-bit sound, and so that was actually played on the Amiga itself and recorded. So that's here, lead guitar and vocal tracks down here. I've got a cool trick going on the snare drum in the box, and that's the only thing that I'm doing in the box other than balancing the levels, kind of like my Use Your DAW as a Tape Machine video. So that, and I'm using ReaPitch on a duplicate of the snare track, and then I have that duplicate track pitched down and then gated, and I actually am sending the original snare track and the gated down pitched version to this channel on the console. I'm going to play the mix so far, and the only thing that I've really done to this so far is I've added some reverb to vocals and drums, and I've got that down tuned snare duplicate track added to the snare drum, and I've got the Symetrix 501 on this channel in the analog domain. So I'm combining both of those 2 snare sounds, the original sound and then the one that's tuned down and then gated, combining those to one output on the audio interface and feeding that to the console channel right here. There was no bottom mic in this case. You can kind of emulate a bottom snare mic with the trick from my last video on Punchy snare drums, so I'll make sure to put a link to that video at the end of this one and in the video description. The toms are here. It's just a stereo pair. There are actually 3 toms, but they've been sent out as a stereo submix here to these 2 channels on the console. Bass guitar, acoustic guitars, electric guitars, the synth, the lead guitar, the vocals. Let's hear this now.
New day out of my head, thinking about the things you said. Oh baby, can't you see what this tangled web is doing to me? But I know it only slightly shows, and I can't believe that you never know. Shake off the stars, get out of bed. Oh, you pretty thing, can't you see what all this empty space is doing to me? And I know it only slightly glows, but I can't believe that you never know.
It sounds pretty good. I EQ'd the bass a little bit. I'm not really sure what I'm doing there. How do I describe what I'm doing? But this bass needs a compressor. So I'm going to go patch a compressor in. So I've added the ART Twin Compressor system, just a single channel of that to the bass guitar insert here. And basically I've got that set to VCA style compression.
Another day out of my head, shake off the stars, get out of bed. Oh, you pretty thing, can't you see what all this empty space is doing to me? And I know it only slightly glows, but I can't believe that you never.
So the bass sounds pretty solid now. It's sitting in the track a lot better. The kick drum also sounds like it needs some compression, so let me patch in a compressor on this kick drum. I've got a lot of space between the kick drum hits, so like in my video of taking a minimal mix and making it sound big, I'm going to blow this kick drum out a little bit with the compressor so I can just lengthen the decay of the kick drum and give it a little bit of that kind of smushy sound. We'll see what happens. I'm just going to go for another channel of the ART TCS Twin Compressor on the bass guitar because those things work great.
You never know. You never know.
And I have two of them, so I have 4 channels, so yeah, I can use that, and I've still got a channel for the lead vocal, so I can throw that thing in the VCA or OPL. It's the OPL vocal preset. I'm going to throw that on the lead vocal because it's an optical compressor followed by a VCA compressor, so it'll really squeeze this vocal track nice. I'm not really adding any reverb to the snare, but I am using that down-pitched snare added to the original snare track. And I want to hear what that sounds like by itself with the lead vocal, because the snare and the lead vocal relationship is extremely important. So let's check out the lead vocal and the snare drum with that detuned snare. Here we go.
And I'm here in this darkness, and I can't believe it takes so long to recognize it's hidden in your eyes.
Sounds pretty good. The snare drum by itself is gated, so it sounds a little funky when you solo it, and it's got a little bit of ambience on it. That's courtesy of the Yamaha Rev500, which I have set to, wait a second, what do I have that thing set to? I have it set to Dark Hall. I like a longer pre-delay normally so that the reverb doesn't get in the way of the initial attack of the drums. So I have a long pre-delay of 20 milliseconds, I believe, and 1.4 seconds of reverb time. And it's the Yamaha Rev500, the Dark Hall setting. So, you know, it's got that 90s, a little bit of a lo-fi reverb, but it sounds great on drums. So I'm using that on the drum kit. On the vocals, I'm using a NuX Atlantic delay and reverb guitar pedal. But this one has a switch for +4. So I can run it off of an auxiliary send on the console, return the stereo outputs to one of these stereo channels, and even use the width control on the Sapphyre channels to, I don't know how the width control on this actually works. If anybody from Soundcraft ever sees this video that designed this console, I like the width control on these stereo channels. Have no idea how it works electronically, but it's a cool feature. And I do tend to like to use that width control on the analog console on reverb returns, and that I'm doing a little bit of that to both of these reverbs, both the Rev500 reverb that's on the drums and also the new X Atlantic delay and reverb pedal. So I've got some cool vocal tracks on this. On the lead vocal, I've got another channel of ART TCS Twin Compressor. I love that thing. They're not really expensive, but the thing is a great compressor. And I love that stacked mode on a vocal with the optical compressor and then the VCA compressor after it. It works fantastic on a vocal track. It gets it right up front and sounds the way that I want it to sound. Very exciting up front, where you can actually pull the vocal back and it'll sit better in the mix. And it also doesn't bring up a lot of sibilance or give you a lot of problems. Doesn't add any noise. So I'm a big fan of that. I don't think they make those anymore, but I'm lucky I have two of those things, and you know, for the price, they get used an awful lot. I had some weird EQ on the room mic I didn't need there. Let's turn that off. That's the bass guitar EQ. See, sometimes I even get confused. I'm like, which channel's which here? Got a couple of other touches of EQ on some of these guitars, but actually this EQ is not even turned on, so there's no EQ there. There is a touch of low mids being added to this electric guitar track right here, and that's really it. I don't have any EQ on the vocal tracks. Really not a lot going on in this mix. I'm just using the console itself and a few compressors and two reverbs, along with that one in the box snare trick to beef up the snare drum, and this is the mix we've got.
New day, out of my head, thinking about the things you said. Oh baby, can't you see what this tangled web is doing to me? But I know it only slightly shows, and I can't believe that you never know. Shake off the stars, get out of bed. Oh, you pretty thing, can't you see what all this empty space is doing to me? And I know it only slightly glows, but I can't believe that you never so long to recognize it's hidden in your eyes.
This, just running it through the console, made it sound bigger and wider. Just running it through the analog circuitry itself helped. And then adding a few choice compressors to different things, and then 2 different reverbs, which sometimes I'll only use 1 reverb, but today I used 2, one longer plate reverb on the vocals and a shorter room reverb on drums. And for this style of music, it worked out really well. Only adding a little bit of reverb to the room mic and the toms. I didn't have any of the other direct mics from the drums sent to the drum reverb. And the vocals and the synthesizer and one of the 2 lead guitars, the higher notes, the one with the higher notes, that lead guitar was going to the plate reverb along with the vocals and the synthesizer. So a relatively simple hybrid mix. It's nice and clean because it's coming from a digital playback source. We've got the nice analog circuitry of the console and some relatively recently made compressors, so they're not very noisy, but they do have a lot of character. A lot of these tracks just sound the way they sound because they were recorded that way. The sounds are kind of baked into the tracks already due to the room that it was recorded in, the way that I recorded these things, and the way that everything fits together. So it's really cool to do it this way through the console using just a minimal amount of processing in the box and really a fairly minimal amount of things in the analog world too. That was really cool and a lot of fun to revisit that song. That song was recorded back when my control room was basically my bedroom. I had a snake running down the hall through the kitchen and into the living room where I had drums and guitar amps and everything. So it was very much kind of a homemade project. And that was one of the first in a long string of records that I worked on over the next 7 years or so in that location and then this one. So it was a lot of fun for me to revisit that track and apply some hybrid style mixing to it when it was originally mixed in the box. Make sure to check out the links in the video description for the link to the original mix of this song if you'd like to compare it to the mix in this video, as well as other links that help support this channel. Also, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the Twin Creek Audio YouTube channel if you have not done so already. I hope each and every one of you out there has an excellent day, night, evening, weekend, weekday, hour, minute, second, nanosecond. Whatever it is you're having, have a good one. Thanks so much for watching.
New day out of my head, thinking about the things you said.